This is part 6, I think, now of our lecture 12. So I ended the last video with talking about the fact that all we can say at this point in our hypothesis test is that at least one mean is different, but we don't yet know which one explicitly is different or if they're all different. So at this point, all we can say in our conclusion would be, the way we would write this would be a one-way between subjects ANOVA. So we want to indicate what type of test that we ran. So remember that the one-way, it just refers to the number of factors that we had. So we only had one factor in this analysis, one independent variable, and so that's called a one-way. In later chapters, we'll talk about factorial designs, which will use a different term there. But in this chapter, we would say a one-way between subjects ANOVA indicated that at least one of the diets resulted in a significantly different amount of weight gain. The way we're going to report our test statistic is, in this chapter, we use F to test this hypothesis. So we're going to write F, that's in italics, and then in parentheses next to it goes the degrees of freedom. So just like in the last chapter, we use the degrees of freedom that we also used to look up our critical value. So remember that we used the degrees of freedom between as the numerator, and the degrees of freedom within was our denominator. So we're always going to present our degrees of freedom in parentheses in that order, where we have the degrees of freedom between is going to be the first number. So in this case, we had degrees of freedom between was 2, and then we'll put a comma and a space, and then we'll put the number associated with the degrees of freedom within. In this example, it was 9. So that's where those two numbers are coming from. And then we'll say what our actual calculated value of F was. In this case, we calculated F in step 3 to be 20.74. And then we're going to end the sentence in the same kind of way. So the same rules apply here as they did in the previous chapters, where if we make the decision to reject the null hypothesis, that's when we're going to use the P is less than, and then whatever our alpha level was. In this example, we used an alpha level of 0.05, so that's why we have P is less than 0.05 here. Had we made the decision fail to reject, that's when we would use that NS at the end of our sentence. So also remember that anytime we make that decision to reject the null hypothesis, we also add an additional bit of information here to the end of our conclusion. And specifically, that information would be in regards to the effect size. So since we did have a significant effect, we want to say how big that effect was. So the way we're going to measure effect size in this chapter is using a statistic called eta squared. So eta, the symbol for that is this N with like a tail thingy next to it. So that's our symbol for eta, and then it has a squared above it. The way we're going to calculate eta squared is by taking the sum of squares between and dividing it by the sum of squares total. So that's our formula for calculating eta squared, which again is a measure of effect size in ANOVA. So this is a pretty easy calculation because we are actually given both of these values back in step 3. So all we need to do at this point is just take that sum of squares between and divide it by that sum of squares total that we were given. So returning to the calculations here, we got our sum of squares between was 16.17, and then the sum of squares total that we were given was 19.67. So when you do those calculations out, you should get an eta squared value of 0.82. So the eta squared can actually be interpreted in about the same way as R squared from the previous chapters. So R squared is the percent of variability that's due to the IV or the treatment. Same thing goes for eta squared, is that it's looking at the percentage of the variability in your study that's due to the treatment or that difference between groups. So 82% of our variability is due to the type of diet that people are on. 82% of the variability in weight gain is due to the diet that people are eating. So that's a pretty big percentage of variability that's being explained. So remember, the same criteria is going to apply here in that anything that's bigger than 0.25 is going to be considered a large effect. So you can go ahead and look back at your chapter 9 notes for the ways to interpret R squared. Those same criteria are going to apply here. But in general, this is a very large effect for this ANOVA. So just like before, we're going to go ahead and add that measure of effect size to the end of our conclusion here. So you'll see that we have our eta squared, and that's how we report it at the end of that sentence. You'll also notice that I left a little bracket here saying to be continued. That's because we actually have to do another step to explain exactly how our groups are different. So in this situation where we have identified that at least one group is different, but we don't know which ones, we have to do what's called a post-hoc test. So a post-hoc test is when you do an additional analysis after you have an ANOVA that rejected the null hypothesis, and when that ANOVA had 3 or more levels. So if we only had 2 levels, so if we were only comparing 2 groups in our ANOVA, we would know exactly which 2 groups were different. It's those 2 groups that we are comparing. Since we have 3 groups in this example, we have the pizza diet, we have the beer diet, and we have the controlled diet, we know that at least one of those is different, but we don't know exactly which one or if all of them are different. So in this situation, we have 3 levels, and we also rejected the null hypothesis. So when you're in a situation like this, where we made the decision to reject the null hypothesis, we have 3 or more levels, you have to do an additional test. And that additional test, the post-hoc test, will allow you to make pairwise comparisons, which means you're comparing 2 means to each other at a time. So we're going to do pairwise comparisons that will compare 2 groups at a time to see where exactly the differences are. So again, we have 3 groups here. So we have pizza, beer, and control. So we'll compare pairs of means at a time to see which ones are different. My cat Walter is saying hi in the background in case you hear it. She's hungry. So moving on to our post-hoc tests. One of the most common post-hoc tests is the Tukey HSD test. And so the Tukey HSD test, what it does, it allows you to compute a single value. So it gives you a number that indicates the minimum difference that you would need between any 2 means to say that those 2 means are significantly different. So the HSD test will have us calculate this HSD value, and then it will have us compare 2 means to each other to see if the difference between those 2 means is bigger or smaller than the HSD value. So if the difference between our 2 means is actually bigger than the HSD value, then we would say that those 2 means are significantly different. So this might make a little bit more sense as we continue through an example, but the main thing to remember is that we're going to calculate a single HSD value, and after we calculate that value, then we can use it to examine our differences between our different means. So let me first tell you how to actually calculate that HSD value. So our formula for HSD is going to be, you take Q, which Q is a value that has to be looked up, okay? So make sure you make good note of that. That Q, it comes from a different table, and we are actually only going to use this Q table for this purpose of the Tukey test. So we'll have to look up that value for Q in the Q table, which is available on Blackboard. And then after we look up that value for Q, we're also going to indicate, or we're going to add into the equation the value from step 3 for the MS within. And also you'll notice part of this equation has little n. So little n, remember, is our sample size in a group or in a condition. So what that means is that you actually need to have the same sample size across each of your groups in order to do the Tukey test. So sometimes this is the case, sometimes not. So that is a requirement to do the Tukey test, is that you have to have equal numbers of people across your different conditions or your different groups that you're comparing. In this example, we did have an equal sample size across our conditions, and so we had 4 people in each of our 3 groups. So we can use the Tukey test in this case since we do have equal numbers of people in each of our conditions. So one other thing I wanted to point out about the Tukey test and looking up our value for Q in particular is that you'll notice that when we're looking up our value for Q, we have to use the number of levels. So our value for K and then also our degrees of freedom within. So the reason I point that out is because when we're looking up our critical value for F, it uses the DF between and the DF within. So just make sure you're using the right numbers when you're looking up your critical values here. So the values for Q, we're going to use our K, the number of levels. In this case, we had 3 levels. And then look back at step 2, you'll see our degrees of freedom within was 9. So let's go ahead and look at the Q table. And so you'll find the Q table in Blackboard, so do make sure to follow along with this as I go through it. But when you look at that Q table, you should again look in the column associated with your number of treatments, K. So again, we had 3 levels, or 3 different groups we were comparing, so that's the column that we're going to look at. And then we're going to look for the row associated with our degrees of freedom within, which was 9. So again, we have these bolded and unbolded values. So we're going to use that same alpha level for our Tukey test as we did in our overall hypothesis test. So we were using an alpha level of 0.05, so we're going to stick with that. So we'll take the non-bolded value, so that gives us 3.95. So we're going to use that value for Q and go ahead and plug that into our equation that's solving for that HSD value. So we'll plug in that value of 3.95 that we just looked up in our table, and then we're going to multiply that by the square root of the division between our MS within, which was 0.39, and then divided by our little n. So again, little n is the number of people in each group. So since that has to be equal, and it was equal in this study, we have 4 people in each of our 3 groups. So we're just going to use the little n, which is 4. So when you're doing these calculations, I recommend to do it one piece at a time. So I would do the 0.39 divided by 4 first, then take the square root of that, and then multiply that by that 3.95. And so when you do all that out, you should get the result of 1.23. So if you don't get 1.23, you probably entered it all into your calculator all at once, and that's probably why you got the wrong answer. So remember that your calculator does not usually factor in the order of operations. So again, what I would do first in this, to calculate this, do the 0.39 divided by 4, take the square root of that, and then do the multiplication. And so next what we would do is we want to identify all the different pairs of means. So pairs being 2, so each of the pairs of means that we want to compare. So we had 3 means in this study, which means that we have 3 pairwise comparisons to make. So the first one being comparing the pizza diet to the beer diet. So again, a pairwise comparison just compares 2 means to each other at a time. So one of those will be the pizza versus beer. Another pairwise comparison we have to make is the pizza versus control. And then our final pairwise comparison to make is the beer versus control. So we just want to make sure we're comparing each mean to each other. It doesn't really matter which one's first and which one's second, just as long as you compare every pair of means to each other. So these are the 3 pairwise comparisons that we're going to make, and I'm going to show you how to do that in the next video.